Today, my guest is Dr. Phillip Deluca, LCSW. He is a licensed clinical social worker, but prefers to be called the untalked therapist, which is trademarked. He is a psychotherapy disruptor, relationship healer, author, speaker, and guinea pig. He is a psychotherapy disruptor because he developed an alternative to conventional relationship counseling that is opposite of what conventionally is accepted. So during a 12-month international speaking tour to promote his first book, The Solo Partner, he saw firsthand the failure of conventional conflict resolution and became more solidly convinced that a new approach was badly needed. Today, my guest is Phillip Deluca.
Welcome to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast with your host, Emmett Muckles. Please visit iTunes, Stitcher, or emmettmuckles.com to listen to all the episodes for free.
Dr. Un, how are you doing today?
Very well. We're excited to be sharing this information.
You know, this
is
pretty cool, and I'm so happy to have you here because, I recently, the universe comes together, and lately I've been talking about relationships and marriage because that is part of our billionaire lifestyle. If we don't have a happy relationship, we don't have a happy life. Like they say, happy wife, happy life. If you're a man, well, that doesn't even really apply today. But can you tell me how this came about? Because you say that you use yourself as a guinea pig.
Yeah, basically, I graduated from graduate school in 77, and so I was practicing in my counseling with couples the standard stuff, which is always get in touch with your anger. It's called the conventional communication approaches, which were developed around the 60s and the 70s. Always get in touch with your anger. Repressed anger is a killer. Be honest and open about how you feel. No secrets. And always deal with the problem now, before you go to bed or you're running from the problem. So I started doing that, and I was noticing the opposite effect. Situation was getting worse. People were coming back with even more conflict. And then I started practicing it in my own relationships. I was having some issues with some women I was dating, and it was having the same effect. So basically I said, well, even though I'm a maverick here, I really don't think it's me. I think it's the approach. So I started tweaking a new approach, experimenting with myself, doing a lot of research, and came up with an alternative. And one of the key components that changed all of this was I started having health problems from all the stress. So I started looking into alternative health and came across some incredible information on the fight-or-flight response and neuroplasticity. And that explained what was happening in the relationships and communication. So when I started applying that, I came up with this solution that is shows basically, says, wait a minute, stop talking to each other when you're upset. It's messing you up. They've been wrong all these years. And basically what it does is it puts people into what I call the dead zone. There's no caring left after a while, so why bother fixing it? So my goal was to stop people from going into that dead zone, because what I discovered was people were coming in and they were like one argument away from that place. I once saw this couple come in where the woman was clearly being dragged in by the man. And she said, why bother, honey? You never follow through on anything. It doesn't matter. And he said, no, this time it's different. I haven't had a drink in 6 months, no women. And he went through this long list of changes. And I said to myself, hey, I think he's got it this time. And she said, dear, I'm happy for you. I think you got it this time. And in the next relationship, you'll make a much better husband. So that's when I said, hey, I think we got a dead zone here, a dead area that once you get there, it's too late. So what I discovered was people were having this conflict applying the express yourself approaches, which, is relationship suicide. That's what I found. It just kills. You want to kill your relationship, your love, your health, your peace. just express yourself when you're upset. Get in touch with your anger. You know, one of the things they leave out with this get in touch with your anger stuff is the science says that episodic anger outbursts for 2 hours after that outburst increases your heart attack rate by 500%. Isn't that interesting? And if you do this over time, the stress from this constant conflict raises your heart attack and stroke rate 2,000% and your cancer rate 3,000%. So why are we encouraging people to stay in this state? You know, it's basically an inflammation process, and inflammation is the source of all health problems. You eliminate inflammation, you pretty much eliminate all disease. And when we get upset, we're in a fight or flight response, the inflammation process. Why are we encouraging people to increase inflammation in their brain and in their relationship and in their bodies? Makes no sense. The science is
irrefutable. So let me ask you this question. So when people, and I understand this myself, because when I'm angry, I will say things that I don't intentionally mean. I will say things just to hurt someone because that is the energy that I am in. What is your take on untalking? Because here's one of the things that I know. A lot of times men are very choosy with their words, where women will let them flow. Is there a difference between the two?
Well, yeah, people who tend to be logic oriented, which in general tends to be men, but I've seen a lot of men who are emotionally driven, like myself, for instance. They tend to have solution-focused approaches, and people who are emotionally driven tend to get into the emotions, and there's where it gets real interesting, because the emotionally based people, such as myself, it's called the fight or flight response. We fight or flee, right? They tend to be fighters. They love, deal with it, get it out, vomit on each other, emotionally, so to speak, and verbally. They love it. We love it. But the problem is the fighters, the logic people, they flee from it. They're like, hey, this thing doesn't work. And all it's going to do is make more chaos. So then, they run, they avoid the issue. The other party then, feels they're running from the problem, and there's a vacuum there, so they fight and move towards them, and then they flee even more, and now you got this cycle going on. And they have this conversation. Well, I would deal with it if you weren't so intense. Well, I wouldn't be so intense and want to deal with it now if you deal with the damn problem and stop running all the time. So now they start chasing their tail. That can be a tough little bugger to get out of.
Yep.
Can be defeated. You can disrupt that pattern.
So what are some of the approaches that you mentor people on, or some of the strategies when you have a couple who are just at odds? They don't really want to talk to each other, or when they talk to each other, it's only to release some kind of emotional rage or some emotional condition that is not pleasant. Right.
Well, conflict comes in two forms. You have the loud arguments where people end up screaming at each other and they say things that they can't take back and bring up old issues. Sometimes the whole family gets pulled in. And then you have what I call stealth arguments, or like Mo would say from the Three Stooges fame, argument with a college education. They just glare at each other, drop some lines. There's these huge drop some eyes at each other, give you the evil eye or the look of death, like my mother used to give to me and my sisters. And then there's they have all these elephants in the room and nobody will talk about. They're real polite.
Yeah.
On the surface, but they're just dying. They're either dying or have died to each other. Very to see. And they have this wall. They just keep bouncing. Both of those just keep bouncing off of this wall. So my goal, what I developed, is it's very simple. 5 steps. First step is you got to become aware of what's going on. You got to see what's going on. So let's back up a minute here. Have you ever noticed that somebody is calm? They're one way. Face is light. They're humorous. They're enjoyable. And then, like, something goes wrong. Somebody puts the dishes in the dishwasher on the wrong shelf, for instance, something major like that. Won't go into war. And then this alien enters their body. And it's like, who the hell is this? It's a different creature. And they're hostile, they're glaring, they're combative, provocative, accusatory. And then something happens, they laugh over something, and laughter detoxes this feeling, and they change back. The alien's gone, and they're back to their old self. And then something happens, and they're back to the alien. The alien keeps coming and going. Have you ever noticed that?
I've seen it multiple times, and I've seen it in relationships, and it's not only uncomfortable to whoever the spouse is, it's uncomfortable to the people who are around them as well.
Oh, yeah, very much so. So, what's going on there is it's the fight or flight response kicking in. Now, we have 2 parts to our brain that we want to focus on, or 3. The front brain, cerebral cortex, gray matter. People know it as gray matter. I call it our genius brain. It's our higher level of functioning, abstract thinking, our creative part of ourself, love, spirituality, empathy, love, and that kind of thing, humor. And then we have in the back part of our brain, if you touch your hand to behind your ears, we have the amygdala, our survival brain. I call it our crocodile brain because we share that same mechanism with the crocodiles and all lower life forms. It's a survival brain. And in between those two is a switching unit called the hypothalamus. And it's like of train tracks. It switches the blood flow from the front brain, genius brain, to our survival brain. So the body, what happens is the body perceives a threat. Now, it's very bad at perceiving real from imagined threats, big from small. So it tends to overreact 99% of the time, since survival is potentially at risk here. So better to overreact, because you never get a second chance if you're wrong, than underreact. So we will react, therefore, to somebody taking our parking spot we were waiting for as to we're about to be eaten by a bear. Same mechanism. So what happens is the hypothalamus, the switching unit, starts switching blood from the front brain to the back brain. And our crocodile brain becomes like on steroids, comes alive, and our front brain, up to 75% of the blood flow, stops, gets shut off. So we can't use it. Did you ever have a limb that you fell asleep on, like your leg, and you got up and you couldn't walk?
Oh,
right?
yeah.
You, like, mentally walk.
Yeah.
And you can't, because there's no blood flow. There's no oxygen, or limited. And if somebody knocks on the door, you drag your foot over to the door, right? Because you can't use it. So that's what happens to the brain. The blood switches from the front brain and falls asleep. It's a dead limb. And the back brain becomes like the Hulk, becomes hardwired and super strength. Now, when it does that, both of those brains are connected through what's called our autonomic nervous system to 90% of our organs: heart, liver, lungs, the whole kabang. And so what happens is this fight or flight response thinks it's about to be eaten by a bear, so it jacks them all up. Blood pressure goes up, lungs expand 1,200%, heart pumps harder, digestion stops because it takes too much energy. I don't need that now. If I'm alive, I'll worry about digesting my food later. So you have all of these physical changes that go on. And if you've ever been upset, so that's called crocodile brain hijack. If you've ever been upset, for instance, and you heard yourself having an internal dialogue going on, you can hear the two brains, one saying, front brain, genius brain, now stay calm, this is going to have real bad consequences, and then your crocodile brain saying, No, I don't want to. And so now they have a dialogue. Have you ever had that discussion in your head?
I've had it, and I'm pretty good at it because, and I can remember specific instances where it occurred where I immediately reacted, and then my front brain kicked in and was like, what are you doing?
That's it.
Like, calm down and apologize or de-escalate this situation.
Yes, that's when your front brain kicks in, evaluative, judgment, long-term thoughts. But what happens when people are having that discussion, and it happened with you for a moment there, they have what's called crocodile brain hijack, where the blood keeps getting rerouted, front brain gets shut off to a point that old brain hijacks the head, and now it takes over. So now people will say, I know I get to that point because it's like words coming out of I can hear the words coming out of my mouth, but I can't stop them. It's like I see a film of my life unfolding in front of me, but I can't do anything about it. That's crocodile brain hijack. And then what happens is we get calmer, the perceived threat is gone, and blood reroutes to our front brain, which turns on. And now we can use it. Now we have regrets, guilt, fear, shame, mistrust issues. At the same time, we have relationship costs we have to pay. We have communication snafus. Sex becomes a battleground over time, a ritual non-existent. Caring drops. There's a whole list of costs we have to pay, and then our health. I'm sure when you've been upset or under a lot of stress, your health is affected. Sleeping, you can't sleep, you got a headache, stomach aches, maybe you're breaking out in a rash, catching every bug that's floating around out there, you got brain fog. So, this thing puts a tremendous stressor on our body. And what conventional approaches saying, they're saying, get in touch with it.
So let me
let it be part of you. Experience it.
Yeah, let me ask you this, though.
Do you really want to experience a heart attack? Really?
Yeah, I have a. Let me ask you this.
Do I want to experience?
How?
Yes, sir.
When you sit down with someone, how do you get them to understand that A, the relationship is repairable, and B,
yes,
you need to forget what you know and listen to what I'm saying? How do you get people to buy into that? Because I know a lot of times when relationships get to that point, it's almost over, especially with
it's tough.
With women, because when women are done, they are done.
But yeah, well, what I do, that's what I've perfected over 40 years. Remember, I had to stop argument like right then and there, because the next argument when they left my office could be it. It's over. They're in the dead zone. So I had to come up with a way to give them a new template to see the problem. Had to be easy to grasp, easy to understand, quick to grasp, and quick to implement and bring immediate results. Like when they left, that was it. If they did it, it had to be simple. End of argument. They were not going to have another argument. And then they can start rebuilding the love before they stepped into that black hole of the dead zone. So, basically the information I gave you is what I give people. They'll start telling me about their issues, arguing here, and I'll say, wait a minute, I hear exactly what's going on. Let me give you some information, and let's see if this is relevant. And then we can plug you into it and get you doing better. So I give them this information I just gave you with some handouts, with some visuals, and they immediately start resonating. Yeah, that's me. And then, so that's step one. They're like, wow, are you a fly on the wall? That's exactly what we say and do. I can't believe it. So that gives them hope. It's not unique to them. See, one of the things when people are caught up in this circular negative pattern, they have a sense of failure. Everything we try fails. They lose respect for themselves because nobody likes acting like that. And crocodile brain is really degrading to us as human beings. And they feel a sense of failure. So they have, that's part of what they're dealing with. So I got to give them a sense of hope right away. Hey, it's not unique to you. You're not defective. You're not worthless. You're not a failure. You're just caught up in this normal process like all of us. And I'm going to show you and teach you a skill on how to get out of it. And it's very simple. and you can get immediate results. So I give them this information, and we were going down the 5 steps. So the first step is see it. So I give them this information and a little more.
Okay.
The next step 2 is to disrupt it. I call it the disruptive step. So now I got to break the pattern. So what I want them to do is build in a pause switch. When you feel these physical changes going on, perhaps your heart pumping harder, what might it be with you? Let me ask you this. When you get upset, what's the physical change that you can feel that indicates this fight or flight response, which, by the way, happens in 1/1,000,000th of a second, so it's real fast? What can you feel that indicates to you that your whole body is doing a major shift here?
I usually get warm.
Yes, warm. It changes because the body's trying to modulate the temperature. Yes. Where do you get warm? What part of your body?
I notice it most in my head because I don't have any hair. So I will immediately start to sweat.
Yes, my stomach gets tight and not a certain way. People tell me they can feel their sinuses flush, their heart pumping harder. That's the sign that this alien is about to take over and destroy you and your life. So you need a pause switch there. So initially, I want to teach them, ideally, the goal is to get them around the other party where they could be in control of themselves, talk from genius brain, interact from genius brain, not crocodile brain, but they can't do that initially. So I need them to develop a skill. So the first step is pause switch. Now, when you feel that coming on before you say and do to the other party what you normally say and do, get away. Now, I need them to get away to get calmer. You've got to let this crocodile brain know that it's not under attack. So I need them to get away, get in another room, and preferably close the door. Put a barrier up to stand down this brain. Then when you're calmer, how can you tell when you're calmer? People tell me, well, how do you know when you're calmer? You get upset, how do you know when you're calmer? Let me ask you that.
Well, because I'm not angry. I mean...
Yeah, you can feel yourself thinking clearly, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm not,
You feel yourself more relaxed.
I don't think about whatever it is that triggered me so much versus when I am angry. That is all that is on my mind is usually it's one of those wrong and right things, like I'm right and I got to make it so that other person knows how right I am.
and you know why that is? Because think about this. If survival is at stake, I have to be it right. And that's one of the changes that occurs when we flip into that. We have mood changes, attitude, and thoughts. So we get volatile, irrational. 1 equals 27, 93. We're all over the place. We get short-term oriented, so we only want to gratify this feeling at the moment. We get oppositional. So what's opposition? Well, I look it up in a dictionary. My dictionary says conflict-seeking, provocative, and, quote, taking an anti-stance. So we're going to take the opposite stance. We're about to be stabbed. You move away. You defend. You counterattack. And you defend and you counterattack. That's all we can do in that brain. That's all it's made for. And we see things in terms of global black and white catastrophic thinking. It's the end of the world. Well, if survival is at stake and you lose, it is. We have to be right. Why? Because if you're wrong one time, you'll be eaten. So you have to be right. We have to control. We have to dominate. You see where I'm going with this? When crocodile brain kicks in and survival is at stake, this dark, bleak, suspicious, paranoid brain, everything that occurs from that point on is seen as survival-based. You're now, in a fraction of a second, you went from a loving partner to a foe who's out to harm, maybe even eat me, so I have to protect against you now instead of loving you. And have you ever noticed why it is that when we get upset, we bring up stuff that's 20 years old and totally irrelevant? Have you ever noticed that?
I have noticed that.
Well, that's because what crocodile brain does, first of all, front brain, or thinking genius brain, knows time periods. Last week was the last week, and now is now. Crocodile brain, when it gets activated, takes an emotional snapshot of the events and the emotions. So and then stores it that way. So when we get upset, everything pops up to as if it just happened now. That's why we'll bring up stuff 20 years ago. And they're like, what do you keep bringing this up for? My mother died 20 years ago. Why do you keep bringing her up? And it's like, because she was a no-good, selfish, la. She's dead. She loved you like her own son. Why do you bring it up? Well, because they get upset. They got upset about something back then. Maybe at the wedding she sat in the wrong chair. You know how that is. That'll set off marriage problems big time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you store that, and when you get upset, it comes like it's right there, right now. The other thing is, have you ever wondered how is it that the other party knows exactly what to say to push my buttons? You ever thought about that? Have you ever noticed that?
Yep.
Well, you know what it is because, now let's go back to what we were talking about. Front brain goes comatose, right? Back brain becomes like on steroids. So what does back brain do? Crocodile brain goes to genius brain and says, okay, tell me what it is that pisses them off, because I got to get them. So now it tells them, we'll bring up this subject, get in their face, and when all else fails, bring up their mother. That will make them nuts. So that's what we do.
No, I said, so basically we just turn into the Hulk and we basically turn green.
That's right. That's exactly right. Our whole insides, just become inflamed. Think of a fire. That's what's happening to our insides when we're in that state. You don't want to throw more fuel on it. You want to calm that down because it's very destructive. You have a fire out of control. Same thing with our body, our psyche, our relationships, our health. So getting back to the 5 steps, so what I do is, first step is you got to see it, which we just explained. We took it out of a personal thing. They're not doing this to you. We all do it when we get upset, and it's part of our biology. That's the way we're made, okay? So there's nothing abnormal with us. We're not personalizing it, so we take the personal element out. Now we have a pause switch, all right? So now you're in the room, but you're fuming. So the question is, what are you going to do to calm down? Well, there's a lot of things you could do. When we get upset, cortisol and adrenaline's released. Those are some of the chemicals. Well, what cools those down? Well, humor, laughter. You ever been upset and you laughed, and you felt like the air cleared right away?
Yeah.
Laughter detoxifies us. It throws the feel-good chemicals, serotonin, oxytocin, and all those really good chemicals. It throws it on the cortisol and drops it down. Calming music, meditation, getting involved with a hobby. I had one man recently tell me that the way he calmed down was he's a makeup artist, and he started doodling with new creative ways to do makeup. And he said, when that activated my genius thoughts, it changed me. The blood rerouted from the back of his brain to the front of his brain, and he was on a whole new place. The alien left. So exercise. Exercise is really important because these chemicals is called fight or flight. That's why when we get upset, everything changes. We get nervous, our muscles tense, we get antsy feet. The body is ready to move. It's ready to run towards the enemy or flee from the enemy. So when we sit there and don't move our body, these chemicals just recycle around and around. They basically cook our inside. It's like putting your foot in your car on the accelerator and the brake. You're going to have a mess up,
Yeah.
So it's really important that people, when they're upset, move. Just walking is good. The more the intense, the better. But just walking it off is real important. So there's a lot of things people can do to drain off these chemicals. Now you're in your room or you're going for a walk or wherever you're at. You get calmer. How do you tell when you're calmer? Well, like you said, I can think clearer. Mm-hmm. People tell me I get calmer. A lot of different things. Then get back around the other party. So I call that step 4, which is communicate, re-engage and communicate. Now you can talk to the person in a way that's going to be constructive and solution-focused and not destructive. See, the two brains have two different goals. One is towards conflict. The other one is towards conflict resolution. Have you ever noticed that when the other party is upset, here's your dilemma people will face with conventional approaches, which is actually my step 5, navigating through provocation. You open the door, you're nice and calm, having a good day, and there they are. They're giving you the look of death, the evil eye, right?
Yeah.
And you know, right? You know, genius brain says, uh-oh, Houston, we got a problem. Or they're quiet. Uh-oh, they're quiet. I know that's a problem. Or they're talking about introducing topics, you know, are troubled topics. And like, whatever it is, you're like, uh-oh, I got a problem. Now, here's your dilemma. They want to talk, right? But you know from experience, if we talk about it, we're going to get into an argument because they don't want to resolve it. They want to clobber me, right?
Absolutely. And I've seen that in so many relationships, even my own. You know, you can't, there are certain periods where you will not find resolution because neither party is in the right place at the same time. And
that's exactly right.
And that usually just escalates whatever you are dealing with at that particular moment.
That's exactly right. So here's your dilemma. I know everything you say they're going to twist around, right? So let's back up a minute. So here's your dilemma. You're at the door. You open it up and you're like, uh-oh, I got a problem. If we talk about it, we're going to get into it. And if I don't talk about it, one, I feel guilty because I'm running from the problem. That sound familiar? And two, they're going to follow me around until we get into it anyway. So I'm in a lose-lose situation. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. So what's the solution for that?
Okay. Let me ask you a question. Who has the real power in this? Here's the scenario. I'm in crocodile brain, right? I'm seeking conflict. You're in genius brain seeking conflict resolution. So who holds the real power there and why?
The one who can think rationally over time.
Yes, but there's a more basic process going on here. Let me give you another example. So I'm an addict, and you're the pusher, right? The addict comes. I come to you, just as an example.
Yep.
Right?
Okay.
I come to you. You're surrounded by bodyguards, security force. I come to you and I say, hey, give me. Here's the money for the heroin. And you say, hey, they cracked down. There's no heroin left in America. Go to Mexico. And so what happens to me? I'm like, well, why don't you give me this last part? I never liked you, so get out of my face. And they're like, so what happens? The addict goes through withdrawal, starts going through, right? The fight-or-flight response, survival, perceived survival gets activated. They go through withdrawal, and they start threatening him. The pusher, I'll kill you, I'll kill your family, I'll burn your house down, I'll rape your daughter, then I'll kill her again. You know, and the pusher's over there thinking, with his arm crossed, he's not going to do anything. I got security all over the stable. He's not coming near me. But who holds the real power in that interaction and why? That's the question. What's the answer? Give it your best shot, Emmett.
You put me on the spot here.
That's the answer to the question.
I know.
That's the answer to our relationship dilemma. So who holds the real power in that interaction and why?
So the one
pusher or the addict?
The addict.
Okay, why?
Because the addict is the one who is making the threats, who needs something, but doesn't know how to get it. So they need to reevaluate where they are to move forward. Because you're at a stalemate. So someone has to come to, I mean, if I want something and what I am doing does not get me the results that I desire, then I'm kind of crazy, which you are at the moment anyway, with someone is in that moment anyway.
Wait a minute, Emmett, let me cut you off. You're making it too complicated. You're using your genius brain to think, to transfer these thoughts to the crocodile brain. The crocodile brain is very simple. It's not complicated. It can't be complicated. It's only made for survival at the moment, nothing else. Okay. It doesn't have the capability to think. So it's just one thing.
So what is it?
Who holds the power?
I don't know. Okay. I'm going to go for it because I am lost right now.
Okay. The addict doesn't hold the power. It's the pusher. The pusher has what the addict wants, which is the heroin. All of that noise is just smoke and mirrors to get the substance, right? He wants that cocaine that he's getting dangled in front of his face.
Yeah.
So the real power, the pusher holds the power in his hand. Once he gives the addict the cocaine, he gives up all his power over the man, right?
Yep.
So let's go back to our scenario. I'm in crocodile brain, seeking conflict. You're seeking conflict resolution. Who holds the real power and why? Well, if we apply it to that situation, the answer is the person in genius brain, because he has what the other person wants, which is what? That's a question for you, Emmett. I'm putting you to the test now.
You know, you're just killing me today here.
Yeah, I know, man. Making you look bad in front of your listeners.
So that person wants what they want, and that could be anything. We're talking about someone who is addicted.
Keep it simple.
So they want drugs.
That's the addict, but in this interaction here between crocodile brain and you're in genius brain. Who holds the real power now and why? Think of the addict situation. What do you have in genius brain that I need in crocodile brain? I need conflict. That's what I need. You see where I'm going?
Yeah. So
that's my heroin.
So how does one resolve that situation? And this is the $1 million question. When you have a couple, particularly, and one is just like, I want to de-escalate this and move on, and the other person is just like, look, I want to rumble right now. You know, that's two opposing forces.
What do you do? Okay, so let's look at this. The real power lies with the person. They're seeking conflict. If you don't give them that conflict, you win. You hold the power. You're not giving them their cocaine. You help them to detox. So how does this translate into real life? Well, here's how it works. Science says that the worst possible way to get through to somebody's crocodile brain is through communication, direct verbal communication. That is the worst way, because what you will do is what your viewers see happen. The more you talk to them, the more they twist what you say into pretzels. Mishear, misinterpret, bring up toxic words, right? Doesn't that happen?
Yeah, I've seen that happen in my own relationships too.
So verbal communication is the worst possible way. So what does work? Well, both of those brains are connected to 90% of our organs, heart, liver, lungs. We talked about that. And they're connected through what's called the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is Latin for wandering, and it touches all of these organs. It's like a snake. It snakes through the body. Well, both of those brains are connected through the spinal cord in different places to the organs. So one jacks it up, fight or flight, and the other, called the rest and digest, which is genius brain, calms it down. That's why after the crisis has passed, we can feel our heart slowing up and our breath getting slower. Correct?
Absolutely.
You feel that afterwards?
Yeah, I have.
Because what's happened is our front brain, our genius brain, is now calming those same organs down. It's saying, hey, the threat's passed. I told you it wasn't any real threat, but you never listened to me. You're a schmuck. You know that. You're a dummy. But, hey, what do I know? You know, it's like a Jewish mother. And so we got that in our head. All of us. You know? So it calms it down. So what do? Well, there are ways to. I was having this conversation with this man yesterday, and he's saying, yeah, my wife, when she loses it, she's an engineer, real brilliant, but when she loses it, man, it's all over. And everything I say, she just clobbers me with. So I said, well, this is what you do. My wife does the same thing. So when we have, like, a disagreement, what I'll do, like we had a disagreement recently, because we were screwing in some screws on a hinge, and, of course, we were tired and hungry, and I didn't do it the right way. So she went into crocodile brain, serious stuff worth getting upset over. So I said, hey, honey, I was trying to talk my way through it, and it was getting worse. She was accusatory, giving me the look, twisting everything around. And so I said, honey, let's take a break. So we sat down, we ate breakfast, which was 12 o'clock, and we were sitting at the table, and she was just going at it with me. And I said to myself, I'm about to go into crocodile brain. I could feel my stomach twitching. I got to get out of here. And then I said, but before I leave, let me try something. So I reached over and I touched her hand. I didn't want to, but I did it. You don't have to like doing it. And what that does, right? Touch activates, when we touch activates feel-good chemicals, serotonin, oxytocin. That's like water on these fight-or-flight chemicals, cortisol, adrenaline, some of the others. So that started it going. And then I got up and I said, come here, honey. Before I left, I said, honey, come here. Let me give you a hug. I need your love. Okay. Loving words. That released some more feel-good chemicals. And then I said, come here, get up, please. Let me get a hug from you. I need your hug. It's so important to me. So I hugged her. Now, her hands were laying limp by her side, and I was, my arms were around her. But she was getting these chemicals released, oxytocin in particular, which is a bonding chemical. Then I slowed up my words because when we're upset, we have a fast clip, if you've noticed, but when we're calming down, it's a slower clip. So I said very slowly into her ear, honey, thank you for your love. It is the most precious thing to me. More chemicals released. Then I kissed her on the top of her head. Kisses release an enormous amount. So I'm hitting her with all of these love chemicals, and the alien left. She just started crying and broke. And then we were back. She was like, oh, I'm sorry, honey. I don't know what came over me. Do you see what I just did there?
Yeah, you disarmed her with love. You pulled out the love. You pulled out the physical love card. The emotional equivalent of a nice bath.
Yeah, I came in through the back door. I gave her the Hail Mary pass entrance. The Hail Mary pass. You know what the Hail Mary is, right?
Yeah,
Peter was at the gate.
Throw
right?
that baby long.
And that's right. So I came in through the back door, and that's the thing that the science says works. You cannot do a frontal assault via communication with somebody in crocodile brain, but you can do rear assaults and massage it out of them. That's a key component because, the express yourself approaches say if you run from the problem, if you don't deal with it now, you're running from the problem. Always deal with never go to bed mad at each other. Well, that works because if you try to resolve it in crocodile brain before you go to bed, you're not going to go to bed for that night, the next night, and the next night after that. So, it does work in a way, but not the way it's supposed to work.
So let me interject here and ask you. So when you get couples that come in, they're probably standoffish. They haven't been intimate in a while. They haven't touched each other or expressed physical, emotional, or higher level of emotional love to each other. How do you get them back to that place to get to that point of touch, that point of communicating non-verbally, or as you say, untalk?
Well, first of all, the first step is they have to get the self-control back over their lives. In other words, when they come in, crocodile, they have what's called, are you familiar with neuroplasticity?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so the brain, as you know, we used to think the brain stopped growing after a certain age, like 21. Well, now we know it grows throughout our life. It's like a muscle. If you use it, it grows. If you don't use it, it shrinks. And it only takes a few hours or days. It works at 1/1000th of a second, so it's real fast. So what happens over time, think about this. You're stuck in this stressful situation or this negative, argumentative, conflict situation. What's going to happen to those two parts of your brain, your genius brain and your crocodile brain? Well, what happens is genius brain shrinks. Because the brain says, hey, I haven't used this part of the brain in a while. I haven't expressed any love, caring in weeks, months, years. So I don't need to keep these neurons firing. So it shrinks the front part of the brain and it grows the back part of the brain. So the brain becomes unbalanced and we get what I call crocodile brain default. It becomes our default setting. What is the default setting? It happens automatically. You don't have to think about it. You just do it automatically. So what happens? That's why people, when they're caught up in these negative situations, they can't focus on themselves. They automatically blame the other one. They have these negative thoughts. People will say, "I got these negative thoughts. I can't get them out of my head about the other party. I just have these worries and these fears." That's a default setting. That means your crocodile brain is taking over your body. You don't want to be there. So when people are coming in, that's what they are. They're blaming the other party. There's no self-awareness. There's no self-focus. There's no self-control, or very little. So my first step is, arguments start two ways. We go into crocodile brain and provoke an argument, or they go in and pull us in. So first step is you control when you provoke an argument. You got to control yourself so that you don't provoke an argument. And then once you got that, enough self-control and awareness, then we'll work on you not getting pulled in when they get into an argument. One of the goals I put out there is Aristotle. He said anybody can become angry. That's easy, even an idiot. I threw that in. He didn't say that part. But to be angry at the right place and at the right time, to the right degree, in the right way, for the right purpose, that's not so easy. So that's the goal. Controlled communication filtered through your front brain, not the express yourself communication approach, which is just, hey, vomit everything, every nasty thing you feel or think on the other party. That's suicide. That doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, that absolutely.
That's out there.
That absolutely is. I want to ask you about your book, The Solo Partner. Tell me how that came about. And because you've been on a nice little book tour here, or you've been promoting very well. So how is that going, and what's the effect you've seen on people with that?
Well, that was a book I came out with in '96, and it was basically, what do you do if you have an uncooperative partner? And this is and one of the chapters I had on there was based on disinformation. It was just one chapter in there. And then I started expanding it out, tweaking it since then, and came up with this less talk, more love approach. Now, what I want to offer your listeners is I'm just finishing up on a free webinar that they can listen to, and it'll explain all of this. I'm going to be wearing a crocodile mask. It's got a lot of good graphics. I'm going to give them. I'm going to walk them through these first two steps. It's a free webinar, so I would encourage them to go to my site, letstalkmorelove.com, sign up for it, and show it to their friends. Watch it with their kids. I'm using this information now with an 11-year-old boy who's got temper problems, and he's like, wow, I never thought about that. That makes perfect sense. So watch it with your kids. Send it to your family. Send it to your mother. Send it to your mother-in-law. Send it to people in your contact list on Facebook, because it has this is a, as we talked about, especially with Step 5, but some of the other stuff, this is a radically new approach. And it has tremendous power to change stuff. I see people who've been to 5, 10 counselors before me, and, within 6 weeks, they're on an incredibly quick, much better place. I mean, conflicts decrease dramatically. They're starting to enjoy each other. The love's returning. So it won't cost people anything, and you have the potential to get some really good benefits. And that's why I'm putting it out there. I want to get this message out to as many people as possible. As you know, relationship breakups are horrible.
Yeah, I've been through one. I've been through one myself, and it leaves you feeling kind of hollow.
Oh yeah, it devastates you, the kids, finances. People turn to drugs, suicide. It's a horrible situation. So whatever, I've spent my last 40 years trying to prevent this with as many people as possible, and I finally found I tweaked the whole system so it's one unified piece, and it's holistic, so it weaves in holistic health. How meditation, yoga, music, humor, exercise, food. Yeah, food.
You've hit the nail on the head. But how can people reach you? Give me all of your methods: Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Instagram. Tell me how to find Dr. Phil Deluca.
Yeah, I have. Actually, I'm not a doctor, but everybody calls me that.
Yeah, it's semantics now. I mean, doctors fix things, so I'm calling you Doc.
Thank you. And my mother would be happy. My late mother would be happy. Oh, my son, he finally made it to a doctor. But they go on my site, letstalkmorelove.com, and I have a dead zone quiz. Take the quiz and see if you where you fit. But regardless, sign up for my course, which is going to be live shortly.
Yep.
My Facebook is Untalk Therapy. Please contact me on that. Twitter is Untalk Therapy. So that's my handle.
Yeah,
Same thing with Untalk Therapy.
I took your quiz and I couldn't even answer the questions because they literally did not apply to me in my relationship.
Well, that's a good sign.
That was an excellent sign. I was like, none of this applies to me. But if I would have gone back 7 years ago, many of them would have applied to my relationship. So that's a good measure to find out where you are in your relationship by going to your website to take that quiz. But I want to thank you so much for being available to the Billionaire Lifestyle Podcast audience. And we look forward to having that course for people to see or having that information that people can digest. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been fun.
So here's where I usually end the show. We are in the month of something right now because you never know when this is going to come up. So here's what you got to do. Open yourself up. The next time you get out the shower, you're buck naked in front of the mirror. Don't just, dry yourself off, of course, but take some time and study yourself because that thing that is you is so magnanimous. It is so glorious. Just like when you look in the mirror and you see that little galaxy that is in the center of your eye. What you have to recognize is you are like those stars in the sky. But when you come across another galaxy in someone else's eye, know that it is special too, and you treat it just like you want to be treated. So it all starts and ends with love. Remember that. Treat each other justly, love yourself, and love others, as the doctrines say, like you want to be loved. Thanks, Mr. Deluca. And we are...
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
we are out. Peace.